Hello! Finally, it's time. I've had this RunCam Split kicking around my desk for a couple of weeks now, and I'm going to install it on this quad. This quad, as you might have seen from other videos, is running the little Micro Swift, the 2.1mm lens, and that was intended as a sort of temporary measure, but I've really come to like that lens, so hopefully the Split is going to live up to this one. Now there's various options on getting the Split. The one I ordered was the GoPro style lens without the Wi-Fi adapter. Now I know the Wi-Fi adapter was only like $5, but because it's stuck down at this right angle, I was like, well, I can't possibly think of a way of installing that, so I didn't bother. So in the box you basically get this: the camera, the lens, and the little module itself, which is obviously made to go on a stack, and it's got various stickers covering it, and it makes a lot of pains in various places to say this only supports 5 volts, do not plug something else into it. I think that's quite important because all the other cameras and stuff have a real wide voltage input, normally like at least 5 to 24 or 5 to 36 volts. This is 5 volts only. The good news is, on the back here, on this little section, it's got your normal connector and pin order that a normal RunCam would have. In theory, I should be able to unplug this camera, unplug it straight into there, and be able to go. That's if the lead is long enough. But anyway, let's get the top off this. Let's have a close look at this and get it installed, because there are a couple of other bits and pieces to take into account when putting together.
So I thought I'd show what the actual RunCam Split looks like next to the Micro. Obviously bigger, obviously a completely different lens and a completely different size, so it's gonna look different, I think that's fair to say. And here's just one of these little labels you've got on the board. Quite a lot of warnings there about not overpowering it and not having anything plugged in when you connect by the USB, because the USB actually, when you connect it by the USB, it puts power back out on the 5 volts. I was noticing my VTX lighting up as well when this was going on. So I thought I'd mention the various choices you've got to power and control this board. I'm going to be using this one, which is the standard RunCam interface with power and video and ground and stuff, and that's just the normal plug. It takes 1 amp of power, so just be aware of that one, what you're connecting to. An alternative here is to use the USB breakout cables, where you can power it and you can get video and audio and all those bits, which I don't think is going to be very popular, but I'll mention it here. It's just it's a more difficult thing because it's going to stick out the side. You've also got a direct connection here to power it on 4.2 volts. It's very specific about the voltages on this thing. I'm not convinced that people will be really using that one. And finally, what you can also do is control it via the UART. So it's got a ground, TX and RX, and in Betaflight and CleanFlight you can actually set this up and control the recording functions and going into setup via one of your spare UARTs, which is quite cool. I'm not going to be doing that because I don't need to. And this is just the other side of the board, where you can see the buttons are nicely exposed on the side, and we'll come to those in a second. But let's also talk about getting the SD card in, because that's a bit of a ball ache.
So putting the memory card in feels like a step backwards with this little thing. You have to unlock this, put your memory card in, it doesn't slot in, close the little flap, and then lock it in place like that. This is going to be under another board, so this ain't coming out. We're going to have to use a USB to get that out. So why they didn't just have like a push and release thing is anyone's guess.
And here it is, all in the stack and complete. Obviously bigger and sticks out a little more, but it's got a couple of mounts in there and it seems to go in pretty nicely. Now if you're not using the Wi-Fi and the app, then not to fear, because if you hold down the Wi-Fi button for a long period, a couple of seconds or something, you can go in a setup menu and there's various bits and pieces you can set up, and it comes with WDR set on, for example. It defaults to NTSC TV out, which I changed over to PAL for me, and you can format the SD card from here, which is quite nice. I won't go through the whole lot of them, but there's a whole bunch of options and bits and pieces you can do, and I might have to play with this later, looking at the sort of footage that I've managed to capture. So here we are setting up on the quad, and this is my DVR recording, where you can see the little red flashing light in the right hand side. That means that is actually recording. Now I immediately looked at this and thought, ugh, this looks a bit washed out, I don't like it. And then as I'm flying along, I'm thinking, oh no, I've got some jello on it. Of course, there's got a CMOS sensor in, so it's much more liable to any vibrations than your normal CCD sensor. And over here, something weird happened where I lost all picture. I can still hear the quad flying, but obviously I can't see it. It didn't come back, so I had to put it down. And this is what the entire flight, because when the flight's that short, I can show it. Here's the entire flight in the HD, which colours a lot better, so that's good. But there's that jello. It's a nice old wobble going on there. But in theory, I've not got a problem with where the props are and stuff showing up. It's just a problem with vibrations, so we're going to have to look at that. And again, there's no real clues on what happened here, just from the fact I just had to ditch it into the field.
So what happened there? Well, when I found the quad, apart from having some mud and stuff on it, although none of the props are broken, we are literally missing the skew off this thing. And it wasn't the fact that this had bust off or something, it was just missing. This is linear, obviously. So I'm guessing what happened is I was using that skew to test on the mini race wing, and as I'd swapped it back, I just hadn't tightened it enough, and it like gone. Tiny skew planar in a big field of grass meant I wasn't able to find it, and I didn't have a spare, so I had to stop, which is a pain. But as I'm just going away for a week with the family, I thought I'd give my impressions of what I found so far right now, and that 30 seconds of flight tells me that I don't particularly like the live FPV image from it. I found it very washed out and a little bit grainy and even pixely in some places. But some of that might be blamed. If this was loose and wiggling around, then that's going to be a problem. I also noticed, as far as jello goes, this mount, the camera here, now can we see this? There's just a little bit of movement in there. Despite there being two screws into this mount in the frame, I can just jiggle that around. So I'll try tightening that up before I have to try maybe going with a different mount with some sort of material to try and absorb vibration. So I will do that next time. But yeah, that's it for now. So first impressions are kind of the recorded image looks really quite nice, aside from the fact it's got jello on it. So it's mainly the fact of, for the next flight when I get back, can I get the live image looking nicer, because I don't particularly like the way it looks at the moment, and can I get rid of any of that jello to make both the live and the recorded stuff look better. But I will see you next time when I'm back. Bye for now.